Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art and culture, and this is Billboard Breakdown. So as I predicted, this week was indeed busier than last week, with not just more activity within the charts, but a slew of new arrivals. And yet my predictions why this actually happened seem to have mostly gone unanswered. Sure, Zayn's debut album Mind to Mind did make an impact, but not with any new arrivals. Instead, well, let's just say I would have preferred Zayn had gotten traction other than, say, Young Thug. But before we get into that, let's talk about our top 10, where unfortunately I didn't get as clean data as I wanted for radio tracking, so this might be a little sketchy. Granted, when it comes down to our top 2, not much was happening anyways. Work by Rihanna and Drake holds the top at number 1 with dominant streaming, strong YouTube, and holding steady on airplay. But it's consistently getting outsold, especially by our number 2, 7 Years by Lucas Graham, which is only gaining more momentum on radio, streaming, and YouTube, and it's ruling sales. But not far behind it is No by Meghan Trainor, which went up to number 3 on serious boost across the board with especially strong sales. But then again, right behind it's Pillow Talk by Zayn, riding off its album boost to number 4 with sizable sales, strong streaming, solid airplay, and picking up traction on YouTube. And this was enough to push down Love Yourself by Justin Bieber down to number 5, but that might have happened regardless, because despite ruling airplay, it had losses across the board. And while My House by Flo Rida might have had stronger sales, it still slid down to number 6 thanks to weaknesses in airplay and streaming. Similar case for Stressed Out by 21 Pilots going down to number 7. Okay sales, stable YouTube, but airplay looks to be dipping and streaming is already fading. Hell, this even pushed down Me, Myself, and I by G-Eazy and Baby Rexha down a slot to number 8, finally. Although part of this might have been driven due to some unstable streaming and pretty decent across the rest of the board. Now this led I Took a Pill in Ibiza by Mike Posner pick a bit of a traction to number 9 with gains across the board. Again, I don't expect this to get a lot higher, but I'm enjoying how well it's doing right now. It's a damn good song. What's more concerning is our newest top 10 entry and easily the worst of them, Work From Home by Fifth Harmony featuring Ty Dolla $ign. The sad thing is, I don't see any signs of this slowing down. Huge YouTube push, solid streaming, big sales with radio struggling to catch up. Not good signs, folks. Not good signs. It's probably going to be around for a while, and it really sucks. So let's take us to our losers and dropouts, and we had a lot in the latter category this week, with the quality generally being pretty mixed. I mean, sure, we got rid of Same Old Love by Selena Gomez, Adventure of a Lifetime by Coldplay, and Hideaway by Daya, but if we lose Here by Alessia Cara, X's and O's by Elle King, and In the Night by The Weeknd, that doesn't seem to be a net positive, at least for me. Now, all these tracks were on their way out naturally, something I can't say about our 2 losers this week, which followed off some temporary success to crash hard. The first is Make Me Like You by Gwen Stefani losing its boost going down to 100, which is at least tolerable compared to Team by Iggy Azalea falling hard to 71. Yikes, that comeback's not happening. But where our real story picks up is with our returning entries and gains, where our songs of the spring began to solidify their presence. So on the one hand, Victorious by Panic at the Disco making a comeback to 94 might strike you as a little bit overmixed and a little bit grating of a song, but compared to most of our gains, well, one is fairly reasonable, with Like I Would by Zayn picking up to 73. But beyond that, this list is all over the place. I can understand Cheap Thrills by Sia and Sean Paul getting the big boost to 39, mostly thanks to American Idol, but I'm still a little bit stunned that Lost Boy by Ruth B got more momentum to follow its gains last week to 47. Outside of that, country music had a considerable list of pickups this week, and it's a shame that most of them suck. With T-Shirt by Thomas Rhett going up to 63, Somewhere on a Beach by Dierks Bentley going up to 43, and That Don't Sound Like You by Lee Brice rising up to 64. Hell, even the songs I mostly like from country are only borderline country songs to begin with Mind Reader by Dustin Lynch going up to 74, and Came Here to Forget by Blake Shelton recovering up to 43. Beyond that, our remaining gains, they don't really make a lot of sense. I mean, sure, I guess I could see Light It Up by Major Lazer and Nyla going up to 84, especially going into the summer. It's got that vibe. But I honestly thought that Jimmy Choo by Fetty Wap had stalled out, not jumping up to 69, or Trying Anything by Shakira suddenly regaining traction to 65. I'm not denying that it's good to hear Shakira, but she's capable of so much better than this. And finally, and most bizarrely of all, The Sound of Silence by Disturbed continues to ride up sales to 51. That's right, Disturbed fans. Their biggest crossover hit in the mainstream to date after over 15 years is a Simon & Garfunkel cover. And as someone who's never really liked Disturbed, I'm kind of perversely amazed by that, not even gonna lie. And speaking of perversity, might as well get to our new arrivals, starting with number 99, Uber Everywhere by Made in TYO.
But I know she's sucking dick. Look, Uber everywhere. Pre-rolls in the Ville. Yeah, Uber everywhere. Pre-rolls in my Ville. Hey,
When I saw the title of the song, I made the assumption that it was just another commercial that had gotten popular. In this day and age, that's way too common on the Hot 100. But turns out that Madeintyo is an Atlanta MC who stakes his claim to unique identity for having spent 6 years in Tokyo. Seriously. I mean, it's not like he'd actually try something new or cool like blend J-pop with a modern trap beat, because, you know, that'd actually be interesting. But this track falls into a very weird place regardless. The trap beat might feel generic, but very distant, warping, plucked melody is brighter than you normally hear in this brand of hip-hop. Beyond that, though, we have an MC with a very dreary, very boring delivery, matching bars where he lazily raps about getting blown in an Uber. Classy. But sarcasm aside, that lack of class is probably the reason why this song perplexes me more than it should. It has this feel that being blown in an Uber being completely mundane, almost intentionally. Either way, this song, it's nothing I'm gonna be caring about in a day or two. So, next. Number 97, New Level by A$AP Ferg featuring Future.
All my niggas put in work. I'm on a new level. 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 Bought me a new shovel. Put these niggas in the dirt. Chain with the new bezel. All my niggas put in work.
I'll admit, when I covered A$AP Ferg nearly 3 years ago, I came down pretty hard on his debut album, Trap Lord. I'm still not wild about that record, but I did come to see what people liked in A$AP Ferg's aggressive and slightly better lyrical construction against the darker, more opulent production. Even if I found some of the content to not nearly be as interesting as it should be. And you know, that's pretty much my opinion on New Level, the lead-off single to his sophomore album. The jittery strings and horns muted and bouncing off the trap beat, and A$AP Ferg spitting a pretty ferocious, triumphant hook and verses about having found success from the grime at the bottom to now being able to provide for the members of his family that are left alive, so kind of dark there. And while I wasn't really blown away by any of his bars or wordplay, he sounded pretty good against his production. And then Future showed up and proved exactly why, if Future's gonna be on a song, it needs to be something grimy or at least has him stay in his lower range. Here he's trying to reach up for the same hype tone as A$AP Ferg has, and man, his voice just sounds shredded, even more than mine right now, with the auto-tune barely able to keep up. He's easily the weakest part of a pretty decent song, so while I might not be that interested in A$AP Ferg's new record, this is fine, I guess. I'll take it. Number 95, Moolah by Young Greatness.
And stack my change, I ain't gon' see that jeweler. Stayed in the kitchen, the whip out that, whip out that, whip out that. Stayed in the kitchen, the whip out that, whip out that, whip out that, whip out that. All I ever had with the, my cousin Leroy with the. In the GT, switching 4 lanes on the stove with the cook gut like propane.
Have to admit, this wasn't what I was expecting. Well, okay, on some level it was. You have a rapper calling himself Young Greatness out of New Orleans, spitting over very breezy trap hi-hats and a sparse, bassy piano melody. This is something that we've all heard before, especially in a week with multiple songs from Young Thug. But for as much as Young Greatness leaps over very similar vocal cadences he raps about slinging cocaine, with decent, if not particularly interesting enough bars, he actually reminds me a fair bit more of Fetty Wap, both in his more melodic hook and the oddly cheery vibe to the song. Also, the odd reggae tone in the backing vocals, it seems far too laid back and free-flowing to be your average cocaine anthem, which does kind of make it stand out in a good way, at least for me. So yeah, I don't really dislike this song. It's fine enough, I'll take it for what it is. Number 93, Digits by Young Thug. You know, I think it's interesting that I got absolutely no requests to cover the newest Slime Seepin' tape from Young Thug. Normally, whenever he drops a project, I get a few requests, but either you guys have learned that I really don't care about Young Thug at all, or that his hype is starting to finally sputter out, mostly because so much of his material is lacking the novelty and the content beyond his off-kilter flow and delivery, which I'll admit has moments on the song that aren't bad. And sure, Young Thug's not saying anything he hasn't said hundreds of times before, including the unsettling lines he has about women that he can control them like a channel, and then he's going into her with a ruler, and that just sounds painful. But the only truly out there line saying that he feels like he's aborted when he snorts cocaine, which barely even tries to make sense. But the telling line is that Young Thug does this when he gets bored, and to some extent, I can see his complete disinterest in shoveling out material of middling quality that diehard fans are gonna proclaim as genius when there's really not much here. And it's not helped by London on the track giving him another desaturated organ-touched trap beat, which might have a little bit of punch but doesn't remotely stand out from the pack, at least for me. But at the end of the day, the worst thing that can happen for a rapper like Young Thug is to become boring. And this track seems to become a warning sign. Just saying. Number 92, Huntin, Fishin, and Lovin' Every Day by Luke Bryan.
A country boy brings. Thank God he made me this way. Hunting and fishing and loving every day. Early in the morning, late in the evening, I'm getting red dirt rich and Flint River paid. Hunting, fishing, and loving every day.
Now, I've said a lot of harsh things about Luke Bryan in the past, but I'll admit that he and his managers are probably shrewd businessmen. They probably saw the country scene tilting away from bro country and knew that they had to hedge their bets with a couple of tracks that could balance out against whatever might come next, especially against the critical set. Hence the reason why we got this as the third single, which is handily summed up lyrically in the title. And sure, I'll take this over Home Alone Tonight, but it's not like this song avoids the production problems that plagued his last album, Kill the Lights. Muddy cymbals layered over everything except the overdubbed vocals, compressed edges on the electric guitars that don't remotely sound country or all that good, too much reverb on Luke Bryan's vocals and a cheap imitation of what Lee Brice has been doing for years now. It might have a decent guitar solo and some good acoustic texture, but I can't help but see this track as a last-ditch attempt to salvage some country credentials from the critical set before bro country fades away completely and his hype's all gone. So in other words, I can see this song pleasing pretty much nobody and fading away fast, and good riddance for that. Number 91, All the Way Up by Fat Joe and Remy Ma featuring French Montana.
Shorty, what you want, shorty, what you need. My niggas run the game, we ain't never leave. Counting up this money, we ain't never sleep. You got V12, I got 12 V's. Got bottles, got weed, got molly. I'm all the way up. Shorty, what you want, I got what you need.
Okay folks, time for a history lesson. For those of you who don't know, which I'm assuming is the majority of you, Fat Joe is a New York rapper and the leader of Terror Squad, if you could say the leader. If you don't know what Terror Squad is, and I'll get why, considering the history behind that mess is a convoluted nightmare of bad business in hip-hop, they were a hip-hop group most well known for associations with one of the late greats of hip-hop, Big Pun. But after he died in 2000, Fat Joe took Terror Squad to new heights with the hit Lean back in 2004, coasting off a Scott Storch beat and the one Terror Squad member that Fat Joe didn't piss off or fire, that being Remy Ma. His career fizzled out a few years later. 50 Cent had claimed credit for that, but it's more likely the stream of mediocre Fat Joe albums did a lot more damage, along with the shifting hip-hop climate. But now Fat Joe is back with his old friend Remy Bond, a collaboration album and a lead-off single, and I'm honestly a little bit conflicted about it. On the one hand, the bassy swell backing up the horn melody does have some personality, it sounds unique, and French Montana actually sounds pretty decent against it for once. But eventually we have Fat Joe and Remy Ma flossing, treating women badly for no reason, and Remy Ma bragging about being on Viagra, which is not information that anyone needs to know, or something you'd want to share. And reading through so many of their actual bars as so many flubbed or abandoned rhymes, was anybody really looking for a comeback from Fat Joe and Remy Ma? Because outside the instrumentation, which I actually kind of like, this is pretty lousy. Next, number 87, With Them by Young Thug.
I just went hunting, I found me a rabbit, I picked out the carrot, picked out the cake. I'm just tired smoking cushy, I need someone rock out of Cali. I got a white bitch and she give me that Beckett, but her name is Sari. I pimp, I don't play with them. She bet I might stay with them. Stack it up like a Lego, yeah. Homicide, you can lay with them.
So remember what I said that the worst thing that could happen to Young Thug is indifference and boredom? Yeah, With Them, prime example of how that could happen, because this song is tedious at best, with a brittle rattle of a beat against a chintzy melody that eventually picks up some melodic accents in the piano, but beyond that, there's not much here. It's exactly what you would expect from Young Thug at this point, without even the excuse of weird vocal inflections to make anything remotely interesting. Young Thug's flow here is very Kirk and abrupt, and while his enunciation is a little bit better, it only serves to highlight that he still has nothing all that original to really say. Brand names, killing people, doing drugs, treating girls badly for no adequately explained reason. It's not funny, it's barely even clever, the rhyming gets painfully lazy on the end of each verse, and the staccato presentation is even less flattering for him than usual. Definitely not a fan of this, it's pretty damn awful, I'd skip it. Number 72, Noise by Kenny Chesney.
We don't have a voice in the streets, in the crowds, it ain't nothing but noise, drowning out all the dreams of this Tennessee boy, just trying to be heard in all this noise.
See, ever look looked at the title of a song, the performer, and then just knew in your heart that things were not gonna turn out well? Well, that was the case for me with Kenny Chesney and Noise, mostly because Kenny Chesney, he normally makes beach fodder, not social statements. Okay, well, there was American Kids, but that song worked because of smart framing and the ramshackle production, whereas this, his lead-off single for his upcoming album, Some Town, Somewhere, it couldn't be further from that. Let's start off with the production, which with the vocal effects piled on to the muddy guitars, fake drums, and some desperate attempt to drive a groove out of the gleaming films of synth, it doesn't remotely sound country and honestly sounds pretty gross. And that's before we get to the lyrics, where Kenny Chesney rambles on about people stuck in a world of constant noise and information, with talking heads on the news and kids stuck in their phones, and wow, Kenny Chesney, those kids just won't get off their lawn, will ya? I do kind of appreciate that he realizes the only way he can cut through is making noise himself, but then again, aren't you just exacerbating the problem? Regardless, I wasn't wild about Kenny Chesney's last record when I covered it 2 years ago with a big revival. And from the looks of this, that's not gonna change anytime soon, because this song is kind of crap. Next, and finally, number 27, Close by Nick Jonas featuring Tove.
Cause space was just a word made up by someone who's afraid to get close. Oh, so close. Oh, want you close. Oh, want you close. Stay close enough, no.
On some level, this team-up makes sense. Nick Jonas might have started off on the wrong foot with Jealous, but he's evolved to being a more tight, more energetic pop artist with some real lyrical ambition that I can appreciate, which is pretty much how I described Tove too, except she didn't really have that opening misfire. She's even better. A pairing between the two, that just makes perfect sense to me. And turns out they're a pretty solid pair on Close, which turns out to be a pretty decent song. Nick Jonas doesn't quite have the tightness that he has on his best tracks, the grooves aren't quite there, and Tove isn't quite as raw in her vocal delivery, but it works against the skittering rattle of the beat through the thick cushion of reverb that actually forms a pretty solid melodic groove that sounds pretty decent and sticks in the memory. And this is one of the cases where the duet is absolutely essential. When your most distinctive lyric is, space was just a word made up by someone who's afraid to get too close, yeah, you want to come that across as mutual coming from both partners. But yeah, the two personalities, they play off pretty well against each other, and while I'll say this song isn't either of their best, it's still enjoyable enough this week, so yeah, I'll take it. So that was this week, and wow, that was pretty rough. No obvious standouts for best of the week, but I'm gonna give it to Close by Nick Jonas and Tove for probably being the most likable, followed by Moolah by Young Greatness. A$AP Ferg, you nearly got there, but I preferred the melodies here, and Young Greatness didn't have Future to deal with. As for the worst, oh man, there's a lot of junk here this week, but I'm probably gonna give it to With Them by Young Thug, with dishonorable mention going to Noise by Kenny Chesney for some god-awful production, and a lyrical concept doesn't nearly feel as fully fleshed out or thought through as it could be. Arguably the bigger disappointment than a Fat Joe return that nobody's gonna care about in a day or two. Okay, I like that the charts got busier, but can we get some quality for next week, please? But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown on Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.